Hey, it's Risa. Tonight I'm going to start the process of making my sweet pickles. It's a two-step process, and I wanted to go on and get this video out, so if you are interested in making some, you can do the same thing. These are some cucumbers that I put in the jar about a week ago, and I wanted to show you what it looks like after doing that. And what you'll do is after you put them in the jar, you'll fill it up with vinegar, and you want to write the date that you'll need to finish the process. So in the meantime, during the 5 weeks that you're waiting, there's a couple of things that you want to do, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. All right, let me get my jar and we'll start filling this up. And you want to put as many cucumbers in there as you can, even if you have to squeeze them in. And you want to use smaller cucumbers. The smaller cucumbers tend to make better pickles. You don't want to get some that are really, really fat. We have one that's pretty big, and I'm not going to use it. You might think I'm putting too many in there by the time it's over with, but like I said, you want to fill it up as much as you can, because later when we cut them, they're not going to take up as much space. So you want to have a full jar. If you need to turn some sideways, you can. Let's see if I can get him in there. Maybe not, he might not fit. Okay, but that's good enough. So after you fill your jar, you're going to fill it up with vinegar. All the way up till cucumbers are covered. You want to use distilled white vinegar for that too. Fill it up, put your lid on it. All right, so what you want to do after you fill your jar, get a piece of tape and stick it on the top of your lid. Write the date, 5 weeks from the day that you put them in here, and that's the date you'll finish the process. Now, over that 5-week period, you might want to go ahead and start looking for some clove oil. Now, what I use is, this is Humco clove oil. There's different brands, but what you want to look for is 100% pure clove oil, and it's got to be food grade. Make sure it's food grade, and it's getting harder to find, so you've got 5 weeks to find some. So go ahead and get some of that. You're not going to need much, it's just a few drops, so you don't need to get a really big jar, and it lasts a really long time. You might think it's a little bit expensive, but it will last literally years in the refrigerator. So go ahead and be looking for that over the next 5-week period. And we'll come back and finish up the video. Hey, it's Risa. Today we get to finish up our pickles. If you remember part 1 of the video, I showed you how we put them in the vinegar and then they sit for 5 weeks, and today we're going to finish those. So let me grab my apron and we'll get started. Okay, so these have been sitting for 5 weeks, like I said, and we're going to pour the vinegar out. Now, you're not going to rinse your jar. You're just going to pour the vinegar out, and then you're going to slice the cucumbers and put the sugar and clove oil in there. So let's pour the vinegar. Let me grab my clove oil. Okay, so we'll slice the pickles or the cucumbers, and as we slice them, we'll put them in the jar, and then we'll layer sugar between the slices. Now, I use a 4-pound bag of sugar. If you buy the big bags, like the 10-pound or 20-pound, then this is equivalent to about 8.5 cups of sugar. So somewhere between 8 and 9 cups of sugar is what we use. So, and how thick you cut them is just your preference. All right. You want to get probably a 2 to 3 inch layer of cucumbers in the jar before you put your first layer of sugar. Okay, so I think I have enough of the cucumbers in there to go ahead and start adding the sugar. Now, some of you may be wondering, where are you going to get your juice from? You poured out all your vinegar. Well, what happens is when you add the sugar, as the sugar dissolves, it draws the vinegar out of the cucumbers, and that makes your juice. So this jar will actually be full of juice after the sugar dissolves. It may take a couple of days for that to happen. But anyway, so layer of cucumbers, layer of sugar. We'll add more cucumbers, more sugar until we fill it all the way up. Right, I think that's enough for the second layer. We'll add some more sugar. Okay, I'm on the last one, and I did want to show you something. Sometimes this happens. You may have a cucumber that's kind of soft when you put it in the jar to begin with. So by the time it sits in vinegar for 5 weeks, it gets mushy. Or sometimes one of the small cucumbers that is at the top of the jar during the 5 weeks may turn white and get extra soft. I have 2 here. These, I think, were at the top, but you see how white they are, and they're really soft. So I'm not going to use these. So if you have any like that, just set them aside, throw them away. We won't use those. Okay, so I've got them all cut up. You see it filled the jar right back up. And then we're going to top it off with the rest of the sugar, and it should fit perfectly. So what we'll do now is we're going to, put the clove oil in it. Now, this is the clove oil I just ordered, and I mentioned to you before, you've got to get the food grade clove oil. This is from the leaf, not the bud. But make sure you use the food grade before you go and put it in your pickles. If you don't use food grade, you're not going to be able to use your pickles. So anyway, let me get my dropper to put this in with. Okay, so I put, to this gallon, I put 7 drops of clove oil. And you just drop it right there on top of the sugar. You wouldn't think that little bit would make much difference in this whole gallon, but it does. You can see at the very bottom, the sugar is starting to dissolve a little bit. So you just want to shake the jar, and it will start drawing that vinegar out of the cucumbers and dissolving the sugar. And that's, like I said, that's where you'll get your juice. Now, just shake it, turn it upside down, turn it around several times a day. The sugar will continue to settle at the bottom until it all dissolves. So after a few days, you'll be ready to eat your pickles. Now they'll last a long time in this jar. You can put the whole jar in the refrigerator, or if you want to take some out and put it in a smaller jar, keep a little bit in the refrigerator at the time, you can. And just sit the jar here, you could put it in a closet somewhere, just in a dark place. But I usually make several gallons a year, and they'll last more than a year. If you make them, leave me a comment. Let me know how they turned out for you. Hope you enjoy.